Okay, so this is going to be my first tutorial, and I just want to let you guys know that yeah, this is obviously not going to be perfect because this is going to be my first one. But I'm just going to try to get the general idea out there. So what I'll be doing is making a simple animation of a scout doing a backflip. Okay, it's going to be as simple as that. So to begin with, we have to get the camera. You go here where it says work camera, you go to the right, you go down here, you go to change scene camera. You press on that and then you head over to new camera, and then you have the new camera right here. But you can only move it. You cannot make bookmarks for it or frames. So what we want to do is go over to this left side, right click, go to create animation sets for existing elements, press it, go to camera 2. You can double press or press OK, and then there you have the new camera. And by doing this, this allows you to control the camera's attributes like tone, map scale, aperture, which has to do with blur, bloom scale, which has to do with the how the screen looks. But due to my PC's limitations, I can't use bloom. So to get rid of this white line you see, as some of you will have, to get rid of it, you just slide the bloom scale all the way to the left, and it's completely gone. Now for these three, I don't know what they do, and I'm sorry that I don't. I never messed with them, but I'm not gonna mess with them because I think those are advanced things for people who know what they're really doing. But anyway, so that's kind of the gist of the camera. You have field of view, controls how far in it is. You can also hold the camera with your mouse. You can use WASD to move. If you press Shift, it goes even faster. And if you use the scroll wheel, it zooms in and out. Pressing Ctrl Z will undo movements. Now that you have the camera set up, I'm going to spawn the scout model. So I'm going to right click here, go to create animation set for new model, go here. Now what I do, this is all mods, which basically shows all the models you have available to you. But if you want to find the higher quality models that TF2 movies use, you press all mods where it says all mods, go down to TF2 movies or TF movies, and then you can type in Scout or any of the mercs you want to use. There's also more things in there, but I only use this for the mercs. So you can press enter or press OK, and the Scout spawns in. So now what I do, I press this. I always leave that as a camera so I can always have a view of that. You pick up the root transformation because if you do that, it moves the entire body without messing it up. And also, when you rotate it, it does it equally. If you grab it by the bicep, you'll notice that when you rotate it, it's at an angle. Now, I think that's because the pelvis itself goes at a slant, but the root transformation will always be flat, which is a lot easier to turn around and move. So now that I have the scout here, I'm going to position him facing the other way. Just like that. Also, make sure you always save by pressing Ctrl S if you want to do it faster, or you can go to File and then press Save. But Ctrl S ensures that you do it by habit. So once you have your scout ready, what you want to do is what I like to do more or less is go to scout, then I go to rig. This rig allows you to move body parts and have other body parts move with it. So if I go to rig biped simple, what this allows me to do, when I grab his hand, you'll see that it moves his entire arm. Now, when I grab his shoulder, it only moves the shoulder. And when I grab his feet, it moves the entire foot and the leg. But if I grab the pelvis, the arms and the feet stay in place. Now, if you go too far, yes, the arms and feet will follow, but they won't be up with the pelvis. The same goes for the head. When you move these, it also moves the entire upper body. And now that I have it rigged, what I will do, I will get him into a first pose that I think is good. So I'm going to get him into a jumping pose right before he jumps. Okay, so now that I have him in a pose that I think fits for a backflip, I'm gonna move him a bit lower. And also, for those who don't know how I'm switching between rotation and movement, if you have a body part selected or a bone, like let's say I grab his head. Now, if I press E while I have his head selected like this, if I press E, it moves to rotation, and if I press W, it moves to movement, just like this. You can move it anywhere. And if you're wondering how moving up and down, if you hold the camera by holding your mouse down, if you hold X, it brings you lower. If you hold Z, it brings you higher. That's how I'm moving without having to go up and down like this. It's really convenient if you're not trying to do that all the time. So now that I got him in a pose that I think is fitting, what I'll do, I'll start by making sure everything looks good to me. To me, I think this is fine because I just want this to be a simple animation just to show you guys how I do my own process and how I think you guys should kind of learn to do things. If you're new to animation, I just want to teach you the most basic things and the tools that I think will be very useful. And I don't even know everything, right? I only have like almost 500 hours. I know some people who have thousands of hours, but even they might not know certain things. So even if you are experienced, having a tutorial that goes over animation might shed light on something you've never seen before. And that's why if anyone sees anything that's wrong or thinks there's some better way to do it, leave it in the comments so I can actually see what you're talking about and I can make it better that way. So now that I have them in a pose I want, I'm going to go down here. This is the graph editor. This is the motion, and this is the clip. This is where the final product will look like, more or less. Now, if you want to turn off your lighting for whatever reason, you right click on this, the preview right here, and then you press enable lighting. This turns off the lighting completely, making everything unlit. Now, if you press enable lighting, it turns the lights on. This is the map lights being used, right? This is what the light that comes from the map itself. Now, if you want to see certain things like the focal plane has to do with blur. So you see this focal distance right here. This focal distance is more or less this purple square you see. That is the focal distance, and depending on where it is, if you have let's say this scout where this purple is, where this purple wall is, if you have the scout there and you turn up aperture right here, if you turn this all the way up, let me get this out the way so you can see. If you turn this all the way up and then go to clip editor, you'll see how it kind of gets blurry around them. You see how it gets blurry? That's because a scout is inside of focal plane right here. Now, if I put scout all the way back there, you'll see how he's all blurry. This can become really useful if you're trying to make shots that have random things happening in the background, or you have a model walking, or you have a main model. Like let's say you have Heavy walking down a bridge and you have models behind him, but you want Heavy to be the main character. You can just use this, and it's a really good way to keep the attention on the Heavy himself. And lighting. So now with that out the way, so you know how to do it, I'll get started with the animating. So the first thing I want to do is probably grab his pelvis, because he's gonna go down a bit and then he's gonna jumps up and he does a backflip. And the best way to do that would be to use his pelvis. So I'm gonna go to around 10 frames out. I'm gonna pull it down to around here. And you'll see how his arms stay up there. The reason they stay up there is because I have him rigged to an IK rig, which means that his arms stay like that. Now, if I had him attached without a rig, which is just the model itself, the arms would follow where the pelvis is going. But since I have the IK rig, the arms stay up here. So I have to manually bring them down like this, which I'll do right now. Just like that. Now, you might be confused by all of these things right here. This is to select things on the graph itself, the timeline. This is to more or less move it. This is to pan around it like this. Now what this does, to be honest, I don't know. And this is to, just zoom in and out. Also, if you want to zoom in and out, you can hold Control and then just scroll. if you want to zoom in on a certain part. So if you grab this point right here, you'll see that it's this. So if I go to this one right here, or the second one, this second one, or this single line right here, it starts off slow and then it kind of picks up. You'll see what I mean. So if I go like this, see how it starts slow and then it speeds up towards the end. If I press on the first one, it goes straight to it. It's called linear. That just goes straight to each point without any smoothing. If I press the third one, it kind of smooths it out between the two. If I press the second one on this one, it causes it to slow down right at the end. It'll kind of smoothly stop instead of abruptly. This one is called a step tangent. So if I choose this right here for the pelvis, I have the pelvis selected right here, and then I choose the step one, the step tangent. If I choose that for this one right here, it won't move down until it hits this point, and then it'll go down all of it at a sudden. This can be useful if you're trying to make more blocky animation because there will be no smoothing. This is probably what you want to use for blocky if you just want to be more or less teleporting to positions. Now, as for these four, I never personally use them, and I don't want to tell you what they do because I don't know what they do. So maybe I'll try to learn them, and then whenever I make another tutorial, if I ever do, I'll go more into depth what those ones do as well. But for the time being, I'm going to have this be the third one. And by the way, if you want to do this quicker, you can just select it and then press the numbers. So this one corresponds to 1, as you see in the parentheses. See it changes 2, changes right there 3, and then 4. It just goes the same for all of these. There's a total of 8, so I can press 8, 6, 7, 4, and it changes them all completely. But for now, I'm going to go on the third one right here. Same for this one. So now that I got him going down in a position, I'm going to update his other body parts to make it look more realistic. I'll be right back. Okay, so now that I got him going in a position which I think looks pretty good, a little more natural than what it was before. And also, if you want to, so if you're trying to update the tangents right here, if you're trying to update how it looks whenever it's moving, all at once, like every body part at once, you can press the model's name, and then you can go on the bookmarker that you're wanting to press, and you can press it. Like, so if I go to the first one, and I press number 4, it'll make it into number 4. If I press number 1, it'll make it into 1, 2, and 3. You get the idea. And that's if you want to do it really fast. Now, it depends. For everything I'm doing here, yes, that's what I want. I want it to all be the same. But for his hands, what I want his hands to do, I want him to go a bit lower than the body, so it looks like he's not just moving exactly with his body. There's little realism there, not just smooth. See, now it looks like that. It looks like he's a little delayed with his hands because his hands aren't going to be exactly synced up with his other parts of his body as you wouldn't in real life. Now that I have him in a position that I think is good, I'm going to grab his pelvis once more, and then I'm going to go to around 5 frames, so it looks like he's going fast. I'll press W to pull this out again, and then I'll pull up just like this. Don't worry, I'll update his body parts real soon. I'll grab his hand so I can get it out the way. Just like that. Now, if you want to make this a lot easier and you don't want to constantly be pulling these up and down, what you can do, you can lock one body part to another. And when I say lock, I more or less mean I drag this body part over whatever body part I want to do. So let's say I want the pelvis to be locked to his right hand. So when I move the pelvis, as you'll see, it'll move his right hand with it. And now it won't do the thing with the left hand. As you see on the right side, it won't move his elbow weirdly like that because now it's attached to the to the pelvis. So every movement I make with the pelvis, it will be repeated on to that part. And the same goes for any body part of the body if you really want to do that. And if you want to get rid of this, they're called transforms. You can either right click and unlock transforms, or you can go to this lock manually and just press it once and it gets rid of it. So now that I have that out the way, I won't personally do it because I want to make these hands a little more to my liking. So I'll have his hands go out a bit. His elbows up a bit so it looks like he's not in the same position the whole time. And if you're moving his elbows, make sure you move him constantly, because sometimes when you move his elbows or a model's elbows and you don't update the position, like right here, it looks kind of weird. But if I just pull it out, it'll look more natural. If you get what I mean. So now I'll pull up his feet. Make sure I put these here. Go here. And now I'll pull up his feet to go like that. I'll make it look like he's actually jumping by dragging his foot downward, so it's not just completely flat. Otherwise, it would just look out of place and weird. So now that I have his legs like that, make it look a little better. Now that I have him like that, I'm going to update his upper half, or his torso, to look a little better. So now that I have that updated, I'm going to preview it so I can see what it looks like. And as you can see, the reason the legs are clipping through is because they have different tangents. So this is the problem if you do this. If you have something like your model's feet set to 3 or the spline tangent, but you have his pelvis set to the second one, which is the flat tangent, it can do this thing where it won't sync up properly, as you'll see here. As he's going down, his feet will go into the ground because they're different tangents and they don't act the same. So be careful when you're using these that you sync them up properly or you use them correctly so they don't clip through the ground like that. So what I'll just do, I'll just sync them up with the other parts of the body by pressing the second tangent. And then when we look at it, it's going to look a lot better so it won't clip through. And I'm going to just adjust his foot position so they look a bit better. So now that I got that out the way, preview it. It's not too bad for just being a simple animation. I'll pull up his torso a bit more. And I'll also tilt it back a little. So now we have a little launch off. See, if you want to make or have a little impact, like this jump right here, I have him going towards the ground, so it looks like there's going to be a buildup of something. If I just have him jump from this position to this position, it doesn't look like much is happening. It just looks like he just jumped up. But having him go down first looks like he's building up the force to make that jump, which makes it look a little bit more realistic and satisfying to watch, in my opinion. So now that I have that like that, I'm going to move this, and I'm going to make it about every 5 seconds or every 5 frames. I'll update his, actually every 2 frames, I'll update his movements from here till he hits the ground. So now I'm going to pull his torso up even more. And mind this, that it's not going to look that good because I'm just trying to make this a quick and simple animation. And if I really wanted to make it look really good as possible, I would probably lock his feet to his pelvis so I can move them a lot easier. But I'm just going to, for the sake of the simplicity of this video, I'm just going to show you the easier way of doing it without having to lock anything or without having to do this where you drag it onto another body part. Okay, so now that I got the second position done where he's starting to spin in the air, I will now make sure everything's good. Make sure you save. And if you're trying to make an animation like this, it's really important that you save, because Because if you mess up, or if your SFM crashes, because sometimes it will just crash for what seems to be no reason. If it crashes, yes, it does autosave, but it's not. You don't want to rely on your autosave to keep your progress, because it doesn't seem, from my experience, it doesn't seem to save every movement you've done until maybe like 5 minutes ago. And I'm not even sure if what I said is true. That's just what I think it is. So make sure you're always saving, even if you do one single movement, even if it's one rotation, you should always save, because you can always undo it, but you can never redo it if you lose progress or if your computer crashes or whatever it does. So always make sure you save. And if you're questioning why I still have this white line here but not on here, it's due to the fact that this work camera used to be the work camera, because I went here and I made a new camera based off of the work camera. But now that I have the work camera as its own little as its own entity, more or less, it doesn't have it because it has its own attributes. But what I can do, I can copy the camera to the work camera. So you would go here, you press this little arrow down here, and then you can press copy to work camera. See now how the work camera has no line, and now the camera 2 has no line. So if you want to get rid of the white line on your work camera, you can always do that. Or you can always just relaunch SFM, because it does get rid of it as well whenever you open up another session. Now, not everyone will have this issue with the white line. The only reason I have is because it's due to my computer's specs, and it just doesn't. For some reason, my computer can't handle SFM. Apparently, even though I can run it just fine, SFM says otherwise. So that's why I had the white line appearing across my screen. Some people won't have that issue at all, and they can use the actual bloom. So I can't help you with bloom scale because I have no clue what it actually looks like. If you want to see tutorials on that, it's probably best you go to another YouTuber that actually showcases what it does, as I can't use it myself. Now back to the scout. So now that I have his position to the point where he's starting to spin in the air, as you can see, it's kind of janky, but I just want to get the idea across of how to do it. I'll move these up a little so it looks a little more realistic, I guess. Or like that. So now that I have him in this position, I'm going to go another 2 frames. And then I'm going to rotate his pelvis. Bring it up. Probably bring it down a little. Move it back a little so it doesn't look like he's just spinning in the middle of the air without moving. And I'm going to move his hip so it looks like his pelvis here is actually moving. And then I'm going to bring up his legs even more. Like this. And sorry if this isn't a good animation. I never really made a backflip before, but I asked my Discord server what they would want to see, and someone said a backflip, and I thought that would be a good way to showcase how I do my animations myself, without going too much in depth and having a more or less simple animation. So now that I have his legs up in the air, even higher, and as you notice, this is a really weird backflip. No one backflips this high, but this is Scout, so we make exceptions. So now that I have his legs up this far, I'm going to start bending his back even more. And the reason I'm making this fast is because if I make the backflip take too long, it won't look good. It'll just look like he's sitting in the air and rotating for no reason. And I don't think anyone really wants to see that. And then his arms, you'll pull him back. And to fix what the elbow's doing, I'm going to grab it. Go here, there. I'm going to grab his elbow, and then I'm going to move it like that so it looks more natural, and then I can adjust it better from there. The same goes for the other hand. Grab his elbow. Problem, okay. So I'm going to pull his arm back more and position it like that. Grab his elbow, and then I'll move it up. Kind of like that. And it also, if your elbow's moving here, you might have to move the model's shoulder, because the shoulder also affects the way the elbow moves. If I move the shoulder down, the elbow also moves with the same way how I move the hands. So always make sure that if you're moving the elbow and the hands, you kind of move the collar along with it, or it just looks like his arm's moving without his shoulder having any movement at all, which can look weird at times. So always try to make shoulder movements if you're doing anything with the arms. So now that I have them in a position I think is just fine, I'm going to save. Make sure you always save. I'm going to keep saying that. Now that I have them like that, I'm going to save, and then I'll make sure I like how it looks, which is just fine for now. Again, I'm not trying to make a good animation. I'm just trying to give you guys a showcase. So that's what it looks like so far. You can always press space to play it. If you press space, it plays whatever you have on the timeline. And if you press this button right here, it, as you can see, it says play once. If you press it, it'll loop it. If you press it once more, it plays bounce, which means I think it plays forward and reverse, and it keeps it going back and forth. You can always do that. And then I believe this is to mute, yeah. And you can always, if you want to get rid of this right here, you can go to the setting icon and press show outliner, or you can right click and do the same exact thing right here. So now that we have all that out the way, I'm going to continue animating this, and I'll do the next position by moving his pelvis first. Okay, so now that I have my progress good, make sure you save. I'm gonna make sure it looks good by previewing it. You can always press on the camera or just zoom out. So I'll play like that just to see how it looks like if we were playing normally. And if I want to look precisely at it, you can always just hold, press and hold, and then drag, and it can go back and forth. Just like that. And if you want to go between frames without having to use your mouse, you can press the left and right arrow on your keyboard, and it does the same exact thing. If you press the top arrow, which is, well, at the top, if you press that, it brings you to the beginning of whatever you're in. So right now, this is the beginning. If I press the bottom arrow, it takes me to the end, which is right here. So if I press the top, it brings me to the beginning. Bottom is the end. Left is to go back one, right is to go forward one. Okay, and if you're trying to go between bookmarks, so if I want to go between this frame and this frame without having to drag or press like this, you can press the left bracket. Left is go left, right is go right. So by pressing the left bracket, it takes you to the frame, the closest frame to the left. If you press the right bracket, what I mean by bracket, it's the two keys right below backspace that are right to the left, below left of it. I'll probably put two images up on screen so you guys can see what they look like. So right backspace, right bracket takes you right to the closest one. Left takes you to the closest one on the left. So if I go right here and I press right, it's going to take me to each one automatically, just like this. And if you want to go in between, you can use the arrow keys right here. So now that you got those tips, I'm going to continue animating. Okay, I'm back, guys. I just got the animating done. I'll show you what it looks like. So as you see, I spaced them apart every 2 frames the entire way until the landing. So if I go here, just to make sure everything's equal, I'm going to grab all these. I'm going to drag over every single one of them. These ones, because these are the ones I want to be more smooth. I'm going to press 3 on them, which is the tangent that I use to kind of smooth things out. I'm going to press 3 on them, and they should be smooth. If any of them weren't on 3, they just got adjusted all to 3. So now that I have it done, I'll play a preview of it. See, this is what it looks like. It's not the best, but gets the idea down. So now that I got that down, I'm going to show you guys how to add any sort of sound or audio you want to add in. So you go to the clip editor, you drag down here, and where it says sound, you have 3 different sections. These don't, it doesn't matter where you actually put them, but this is just to stay organized. You can put them in dialogue, music, or effects. For now, I'll put it in music. I'll right click on this little lighter green area. I'll right click on it, and then I'll go to add clip to track. So now that I'm here, you can look through every single sound that you have. So if I go
Your
here,
knife hacked that just now
like
for a laugh. Probably didn't even see that.
So I can add any sort of sound I want. It has every sound from TF2 in here, or it should have every single sound from TF2 in here. And again, I'm in all mods, which means this has every single file from TF2 to Half-Life 2 to the ones I downloaded myself. So I'm gonna go to user mod. This is where I keep all my personal sounds where I put them into SFM. You can also get them from the workshop, which I don't have any, but you can download sounds from the workshop, I believe. You can go. I'm gonna go to user mod. I'm gonna look for something that I think is good. Let me see if I have it. I'm gonna use this sound called monkey flip. I don't know why. I just will. Now, if you want to, so I'm gonna play this sound, and you're gonna hear that it's kind of loud. See how it's kind of loud? And for me, that's a little too loud. So what I'll do, I'll right-click on this audio. I'll go to Show an Element Viewer. I'll go to Sound. And then once you press Sound, it'll show you all this. You can change the pitch, the level. I'm not sure what static is. I'm not worrying about that. But you can also change... one important thing, if you go here, if you're on a map that has really bad echoing, because some maps have built-in echo for every audio you put in. So what I do, I go all the way to the beginning and I put a hashtag that prevents any echoing from happening in any map. Now, Stage, the map I'm on right now, has no echo, so I don't have to worry about echo, but this is just to give you an example. So if you want to change the volume, I would go here. Let's say I want it half as loud. I would just put 0.5 or 0.5 and then press enter. Once you have that down, you'll see that it's not as loud. And you can even go down to 0.1. See? But for now, I'll keep it at 0.5 to keep it pretty loud but not overwhelming. So now that I got the audio down, yeah, I believe you can also adjust the volume from here, as it says set volume. Yes, you can enter it right here, which is probably the better way to do it. But again, if you're trying to take away the echoing, that's how I do it. I go to Element Viewer and then I put the hashtag at the front of the file name. So now that I have the scout animation done, what I'll do, I'm going to adjust my camera first. That's just what I want to do first. I'll adjust the camera. It's more in frame like that. So now that he's jumping, I'm going to go here in the left side of the screen again. I'll press right click and then I'll go to create animation set for new light. Once that has happened, you'll see it spawns in a new light. I'll briefly go over all the features I know in the light. So to begin with, intensity is, as it sounds like, it just makes it brighter or dimmer, as you can see. Ambient intensity, if I'm right, it adjusts the, so if I have this light looking right here and I adjust the ambient intensity, I don't know if you can see, it might be too bright, but if I'm right, it just adds a little, it makes the light kind of spread out just a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. If we go to horizontal FOV and vertical, you'll see the horizontal zooms in. If we go to vertical, it shrinks it. But the easier way to change light, you hold down the screen like you do with the cameras to move. You hold down the camera. You can use WASD to move the camera, just like the camera movements. And if you zoom in, it shrinks, right? If you zoom out, it enlarges. So let's say you want to light up Scout from this side right here. Let's say I want to light up Scout from here. Just an example, I'll light him up from this side right here. I like this side. Now, what Radius does, it blends the light so it's not just a straight edge. Camera here, you see how it's really bright? I'll drag tone map scale all the way to the left, makes it completely black. I drag it a little more, it darkens it, right? So now that you can see him a bit better, I'm going to place these lights so that it's more split in half so you can see what I mean by the radius. Turn the radius off on both of them. So now that you see right there, the bottom half is blue, the top is red, in the middle there's some purple because the lights are kind of mixing together, but it's more blue than red. They're kind of just overlapping. So what you'll do, you'll go to light 1, you'll put the radius, depending on how much you want it to blend, I'm going to say about a quarter, an eighth or so. I'm going to put both of them to around that point, and you'll see how they'll kind of blend in together. You see right there? They'll kind of mix in and they'll kind of blend to the point where there's no solid line in between. So if let's say I put this max, what will happen, you see, that's why you don't want the radius too high. The red is trying to blend in so much that it completely messes up how it looks. Now, if I put the radius around half, you'll see that it's blending in a lot more than the blue is, because the blue is at a different level of the radius. So if I have the radius around this point, which is generally where you want it at, you want it from this point to about half. If you have a more than half, it's probably going to look bad from my own experience. So I have both of them around this section about a fifth of the way, and you go here, you'll see how they'll blend in together. Now, you'll see how the light hits the wall right here. And let's say you don't want to see the light on the wall. So what you'll do, you go down here to where it says far Z atom. What far Z atom does, it controls how far the light will shine. So if I drag it back, you'll see how it will disappear from the wall. If I drag it even more, it'll stay there. But if this was a big map and I draw it all the way back to only where the scout is, you would see no lights past the scout. If I put it all the way right, you would see the light go even further out than it was previously. And for these right here, the shadow filter size and the shadow filter size and shadow atom, they have to do with how the shadows look when a light is hitting a model. So I'll get rid of this blue light, and I'll put this directly on Scout, and let's see. So I'll go above his head. So if I drag this all the way to the right, it makes more or less a solid line. Shadow atom, as you can see, it creates an actual shadow. So if I want, this is a good way to show it. So if I have shadow atom all the way to the left, it creates a shadow where the light is hitting the model on the ground. So as you can see, the light is above Scout, and wherever the light can't hit the ground, that's where the shadow is made. And for the shadow, you see how it has this weird pattern? That's because the shadow filter size is going to the right, which creates this weird looking pattern. And having this pattern is good whenever you want to blend two lights together or blend a light to an object, and it just won't work well with it being completely solid like this. So if you look here, if I have, you see, this is a problem. If I have shadow atom all the way to the left and I have shadow filter size all the way to the left, it'll create this really weird looking shadow that it doesn't look good. But if you want it to look better, you'll drag the shadow filter size more towards the standard or the default state, and you'll see how it will kind of blend more. The more and more I drag it, the better it'll probably look, you see? Now, the best way to do this is probably have it around here, drag the shadow atom back a bit, and put the radius a little lower so that it blends in more with the ground. So if I want to have a solid line, shadow that, the darkest shadow you can get, and you want to have it look just like that but blend in a little, you'll have very little radius. And as you can see, it kind of smooths out the edges right there. See how it's more sharp right here? When I go to clip editor, you'll see how they smooth out, just like that. And if you have the radius too high, it'll make it look really bad. You don't want to have the radius high when you're messing with these two right here. So I'll leave the light just like that. Now when it comes to constant, what you want to do with that is whenever you drag it to the right, it creates a really bright light. And I'll do this with the blue light. If I drag the blue light and I point it towards the wall, you'll see how it's kind of dim, right? It's not that bright. But if I grab this and I drag it to the right, you see how much brighter it got? And as you had to move it just once on constant to make it a completely solid light. Now, if you go on linear, it's a lot more gradual and you can adjust it a lot better than constant. So if you're trying to make a really bright light, let's say on the ground, and you're trying to make a window, like cast a shadow from a window, you would want to use things like constant or linear because it creates a much brighter light that creates more defined shadows. And for quadratic, it just dims and brightens the light very little. That's all it does from what I learned. Now, when it comes to shadow depth bias and all of these right here, I'm not sure what it does. The only thing I know is far Z atom, which controls how far the light goes. Now, with all that out the way, volumetric intensity is more or less to create a cone of light. Now, I can't show you what that looks like because my computer can't handle it, apparently, according to SFM. But let's say your computer works and you want to try volumetric intensity. If I'm right, what you would do, you would go here on your light, you would press it, press right click, and then you would press enable volumetrics. By doing this, you allow your light to become a volumetric light, which allows it to show. Now, as you can see, mine shows white lines because my laptop won't let SFM do it. But on your screen, whenever you move this up, you should see a cone of light, more or less. Now, on my screen, like I said, I can't see that. My SFM won't do that for me. But for you, what it should do is create a cone of light that you can see. So if you had like a lamp a top on a table and you wanted to show it like showing light on a table, like a white cone going to the table as if it were light, what you would do, you would put the light where the lamp is, facing towards the table, and turn up volumetric intensity. Don't have it too high because it'd be really bright. You just want it bright enough to show that light's coming from the bulb. And if you're in a case and you have the same situation as me where you can't use volumetric, your best bet is just to have a light pointing towards the table instead of having a cone, because then you at least know that it's producing light. So enough with the volumetric, because I don't want to talk too much about it since I can't do much with it. So I'll turn it off. As you can see, it's off. Now that I got the main idea out the way, and you saw how I added sound right here, and how I animated doing all this, taking you slowly through the process, I'd say, and how to adjust the lights. I hope you guys understand how the lights work. Also, with the colors, it's RGB more or less. If I drag this red light and I pull it back, it'll become more yellow. And you always want to experiment. If you're trying to find a color, don't do what I did where you just put a solid red and solid blue. It probably won't look that good. I'm just doing it for example of this video. So if you want a more orange light, you would pull back green, and then you would get more orange light. If you want wider, like this, you would pull even further. Again, if you want just a pure white light, you'll just put everything to the right. If you want a blue one, you put red, and then you put green, and you get blue. If you want purple, you just pull the green one, just like that. And it becomes more magenta-like when you pull it further. Now with that out the way, I'm going to put it back to roughly its original state. I'll turn this down. See, just like that. And then if I really want to control how bright the light is whenever I have tone map scale up, like right here, I would go down to quadratic, and then I could adjust it even further from there. Quadratic is really good whenever you have the light, whenever you have the camera have a high tone map scale. It's a lot better to use the quadratic because it allows you to finely adjust it, other than the intensity, which is a lot more. It's not as subtle. It's more drastic change. Quadratic allows you to subtly change it. As you can see, it's a lot more smoother, and it's really useful if your map is already bright and you don't have your camera set to a low brightness. Now, with all of that out the way, I'm going to show you how you would export this. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to my camera right here. Now, just for the time being, I'm going to press these icons to get rid of the lights. As you can see, it gets rid of them. You can do this with anything that's inside of this area. If I press the camera, I won't be able to select anything from the camera. If I press the scout, it completely gets rid of the scout. So for the time being, I'm going to get rid of the lights so I can show you just how to do it. So you would go to Files. Make sure you saved your progress. Make sure you save. You would go to Files. You would go down to Export. Depending on what you want. If you want an animation, you would go to Movie. And then from here, you can adjust it. So if I want a movie, I would go here. If I want an image sequence, which is just a bunch of images, it's basically taking a screenshot of every frame from your animation, and that's what it does. If you want the sound, it's pretty self-explanatory. It just gives you the sound. Now, what I like to do whenever I make movies, I just put it as movie. I go to MP4, and to get MP4, you have to download something called QuickTime. If you don't have it, it'll tell you to install QuickTime for more exporting options. I have it installed, so I can't really show you what I'm talking about, but if you don't have it installed, you'll see what I mean. What I like to do is have MP4, I just leave it as this. Sometimes I think most of the time I put it as this. I'm not sure what it necessarily does. I don't adjust the gamma as I'm not entirely sure what it does. What I do though, I go here, I go to 1080p, and then I leave it as seconds, and then you put it, if you want the entire animation exported out, you would press sequence. If you press selected shots, it would only export the shot that you have selected in the clip editor. And if you want custom, it goes from a certain time to another time. If you go down here, it allows you to adjust things even more. But I don't mess with these, as you can do them before you get to this point in time. Now, I won't export that because I'm just showing you guys how to do it. And once you have that all down, you would want to go here and make sure you change the output file, because mine exports into SFM's files, and I don't like that. So what I do, I go to my personal files, and then I go to videos. That's how I personally do them. And then I just export to videos, name it, and then it does it for you. Now, if you guys want, you can just do that. If you want to export just the poster, so if you just want this image without nothing else, you would go to File, you would go to Export again, but you would go to Poster. Now, the poster is better than just taking an image, because the image is like a cheap screenshot. It's not that good. Going to PNG renders it a lot better. And as you can see, it's going to do 1920 by 1080, but you can change this to whatever you want. And if you want to constrain, that means whenever I adjust it, so if I go 19 like that, it's going to adjust it. If I uncheck constrain, that means whenever I go like 19, it will not adjust the other side. But I do want it to adjust. So I would go 1920, and it becomes 1080. Now, what a TGA is, TGA file, I think that's more for SFM. You would want to export as a PNG or JPEG if you want higher quality, I think. And then once you got that down, you do the same thing with the output file. You would go, like for me, I just go to pictures and I put it there. That's where I go to do it. And it's a lot simpler than the movies. All you have to do is press export once you have your file directory ready, and that's it. Now, I think I got all of that out the way. I'll cover this really quickly. So if I have my camera, let's say I have my camera going from left to right. My camera going like this, right? See how my camera moves just like that? Just like that. So if I have my camera going from this position to a slightly higher one, but I wanted to kind of jitter back and forth, I would go into the motion editor. This is what the motion editor is really good for. I would go into the motion editor. I would go right here where it says, and before you do this, make sure you select the time, the section you want to adjust by dragging the ends of these green bars. I would go to these sliders to the right. I would go to jitter, which causes the camera to kind of jitter back and forth like this. Now, if you want to just adjust the camera's position and not make the lighting, as you saw, the lighting gets bright like that. If you don't want it to get bright like that, you would go to camera, go to all, and then press on transformation. That just moves the camera itself. It doesn't adjust the brightness or anything like that. So when I do that, I would go to jitter, and then boom. You see how it's like that? But if you notice, it's kind of choppy. So if you want to smooth it out, you just go to smooth and you drag it. And as you see, it smooths it out. If you don't want it to be too smooth, just make sure you don't pull it too far, and you kind of make sure you do it gradually. Now mine's still a little choppy, so I'll smooth it out a lot, and you see how it kind of just glides through. That's how I like it. Now, if you want it to be really choppy, you would just grab jitter, and there you go. That's all it takes to adjust the camera's shakiness and all that. And this works in autos as well. If I want to make Scout really shaky when he's jumping, or when he's about to jump, I would go to jitter, and you'll see he's really jittery. Right, just like that. And if I want to make him look like that before he jumps, I would just smooth it out. And there you go. He's jittering right before he jumps. Now with that out the way, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, if you guys have any suggestions or tips that you think I missed that are really important, leave them in the comments, because there's certain things I don't even know. Again, I don't have too much time in SFM compared to other people, so I don't know too much. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment in the videos comment section, and I'll see if I can help you or other people can help you. I hope you guys learned quite a lot from this. If you didn't, I'll try to make a better one next time whenever I make a poster, more specifically a poster, so I can show you how lighting and more camera work is more used in the poster than the animation. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day and God bless.